Tony rummaged through the dumpster at the back of the supermarket, hoping to find some bearable food. It was dark outside, and there were no passers-by inside. So the man, not afraid that someone will see him and chase him away, concentrated on going through the discarded food. Each time he approached the dumpster, he wrinkled his nose at the unbearable stench. But the nausea and disgust were nothing compared to the feeling of hunger. "Hello, Tony," he heard a familiar voice. A security guard came out of the supermarket, lit a cigarette and waved at the homeless vagrant. Tony came to the dumpsters almost every day. The quiet, poorly dressed man in a foreign food boots and a greasy denim jacket was familiar to the guard. Without distracting himself from sorting through the garbage, he waved to the guard. "Hey, Tony," the guard called him again. "Wait for me. I will get something for you." The man disappeared behind the door and returned with a cardboard box of sandwiches and thermos flask. He handed the food to the homeless man and poured tea into a plastic cup. "Eat." The homeless man greedily bit into the ham and cheese sandwich. The guard often fed the homeless man. He might not have spared anyone else, but this poor man didn't make him squeamish. Sometimes they exchanged a few sentences, but the homeless man was not talkative, did not talk about himself, did not say how he came to such a life. Only the guard realized that this was an unusual virgin. Despite his beggarly appearance, he spoke well, and the homeless man's eyes were intelligent, not like the homeless who had long lost all the values of life. Little could have happened to this man. Maybe something bad happened to him. The guard thought about the homeless man. Surely Tony had not always lived on the streets. And that was true. Tony had been raised by his mother. His father had left them when he was only 5 years old. Over the years, his father's face had faded from his memory, and the only remember of his parents' existence was a small, old tattered photograph that Tony kept in his inside pocket of his jean jacket. It showed a tall man with dark hair, his mother sitting on a chair beside him with Tony on her lap. The old picture was all the man had left of his parents. Tony's mother had died of a young age, and the loss of the closest and most loved person in his life was something he could not recover from for a long time. The young man tried to find his father, to find at least some kindred spirit, but all attempts ended in failure. His mother once told Tony that it was not worth looking for his father because he had long since found another family. In time, Tony married fellow student Megan. Together, they set up a family nest, inherited it from his mother, and made plans for a long and happy life. After graduation, they both got jobs, and a few months later, Megan announced to Tony that they were about to become parents. "I'm so happy," Tony told his wife. "With your arrival, my life has been filled with joy, and now you're going to give me a baby. We're going to have the most beautiful and intelligent baby," Megan replied, inspired by her husband's reaction to the upcoming addition to the family. "I can already imagine you taking him to the park and teaching him how to ride a bike." "I love you so much," Tony said, looking into the eyes of his beloved, and kissed the future mother of his baby. The couple was happy, even though they lived poorly. They had enough. Tony even managed to save a little, because after the birth of a child, his wife will not be able to work for some time. Every month, Megan's belly grew bigger and bigger, and when her husband stroked her in the evenings, he felt unspeakable happiness and love for his future son. Megan and Tony's baby became the center of the universe. Everything in the family revolved around him. Feeding, bathing, walking, Bobby grew up to be a strong, active, and a very smiling baby. When the boy turned 3, his parents gave him a bicycle. Without even tasting the birthday cake, the boy asked to go out into the yard. "I want to ride the bike," he said, standing in the hallway and putting on his sneakers. "Let's at least eat first." Megan splashed her hands. "You haven't eaten anything." "Well, we will eat later," then Tony said, and they walked out into the yard together. Bobby proudly saddled his bike, even though his legs could barely reach the pedals. His father rolled it down the sidewalk, and the boy enthusiastically steered the handlebars left and right. Tony and his son were so engrossed that they didn't notice where the bike's wheel hit a cobblestone. The toy vehicle jerked, swayed, and Bobby fell to the sidewalk. "Oh, it hurts," the boy cried. Megan ran to her son, but Tony had already picked him up. Blood showed through the hole in his pant leg. At home, Megan tended to the wound and calmed Bobby. After some crying, the boy fell asleep. The party was ruined. Tony tried to console his wife. "It's not a big deal. Boy get bumps and bruises all the time. It's normal." "I was so scared," Megan sighed. "You saw the bump on his head." "Don't worry, honey. It'll be fine. It'll be fine." But 2 years later, that accidental and seemingly harmless fall from his bike came back to haunt him. Bobby got sick. Concerned parents took him to doctors, but for a long time they could not understand what was wrong with the boy. Tests showed that the boy was healthy, but he stopped running, lay down all the time, and ate almost nothing. The boy began to wither before Tony and Megan's eyes. After lengthy examinations, the doctors made a terrible diagnosis. The son of a young couple is terminally ill. "Is there nothing that can be done?" Megan asked the doctor with a hopeful look in her eyes. "You see, the impact of the fall was strong. It's provoked the formation of a brain tumor." "Couldn't there be an operation or some kind of medication?" Tony asked. "Medication will be necessary, that's for sure. But we can only support Bobby for a while. Unfortunately, he's lost. Kids with these diseases don't live more than a year or 2. Megan and Tony didn't want to believe the doctor's prognosis. They tried to help their son as best as they could. Tony withdrew all the money from his bank account and went into debt to buy medicine. But it cost so much that each time he realized he will soon not only be unable to pay for treatment, but also unable to feed his family. But he struggled as best as he could, working part-time at night, taking out several loans from banks, borrowing as much as he could from friends and co-workers. Megan, on the other hand, had given up. She sat on the couch all day, rocking from side to side as if bewitched, and was silent. Then one day, Tony came home to find his wife in a bathtub. The water was blood red. Megan had committed suicide by slashing her wrist with a sharp razor, no longer able to fight for the life of her child. A month later, Bobby died as well. A grief-stricken Tony had his son buried in church, but no sooner had he recovered from his grief than he was hit with another blow. The bank he had borrowed from to help his sick baby foreclosed on his apartment. So the widower, who had lost his child, found himself on the street with no means of subsistence and no prospects for a normal life. "Well, have you had anything to eat, Tony?" the guard asked the tramp. "You wait and go. Today the vendors prepared food to be written off, but they didn't have time to throw it away. I'll bring it to you now." The guard returned with a large bag. Tony thanked him and laughed. Poor guy, the guard thought as he watched him go. Late in the afternoon, Sandra came home from work. She didn't like walking the streets at night and was even afraid. When she was a student, she had lost her parents on a dark night. Mom and Dad were coming home from a visit. Dad had parked the car and Mom was waiting for him at the door when he suddenly saw the shadows of strangers flickering nearby. "Car keys and money," demanded the robbers. Quickly, Sandra's father did not hesitate and punched one of the robbers in the stomach. Another man's fist broke his nose, but he didn't have time to dodge the sharp blade of the knife. When he heard the noise, his wife rushed to his aid. "Get away from him! I'll call the police!" she shouted, calling for help. At that moment, the robber's knife stabbed her in the neck and then in the chest. The woman fell to the pavement next to her bleeding husband. The paramedics arrived too late. Sandra's parents were dead. Since then, she has tried not to walk the streets in the dark, but that night her boss kept Sandra late, demanding that she finish all her reports. After letting the taxi go near the house, the girl walked across the square to her front door, when suddenly 3 men came out of the alley and blocked her way. "Look what a pussycat going in our way," said one of them, grinning a wicked smile. "Let's see what's under her tail," said the other, grabbing Sandra by hem of her skirt. "What are you doing?" The girl was frightened. "Let me go or I will scream." She tried to free herself from the hooligans' clinging hands, which only made them more agitated. The girl's body stiffened with fear. She tried to scream, but only a low croak escaped her throat. "Help!" "Leave the girl alone." Sandra heard a man's voice and saw a dirty homeless man, holding a stick and written in the thoughts, "Look who's come to defend the princess. A knight on a white horse," laughed one of the hooligans. "How could you not recognize him? It's Bruce Lee in James Bond Disguise has a bomb," said another villain. No one knows how this fight will have ended, but suddenly a car drove into a yard and shone its headlights on the hooligans. Let's go, hurry up," shouted the most brazen scumbag, letting Sandra out of his clutching hands, and the hooligans who had attacked the girl disappeared behind the trees at the back of the park. Are you all right? Homeless man asked Sandra. "Yes, thank you." The frightened girl thanked him. "I don't even know what they did to me." "It's okay now. I'm glad you're okay." Tony nodded to her and walked down the path to the exit of the yard. Sandra looked after him. This homeless man had just saved her life. She didn't want to let him go. "Wait," she called after the homeless man in the dirty clothes. "Wait." Tony turned around and the girl caught up with him and came closer. She looked into his eyes. They were not the eyes of a homeless man who lived on the streets and ate scraps from garbage cans. They were the eyes of a very different man, intelligent, kind, and very, very sad. "Come with me," Sandra said, holding out her hand to her rescuer. He stared at her for a few seconds, then reached out to take her hand, but immediately pulled it away. Just a few hours ago, he had used that hand to dig through a garbage can. Sandra nodded in understanding. She walked to the front door, Tony following her. "Come in," she invited the homeless man, opening the door to her apartment. "Don't be shy." Tony looked around in confusion. Sandra's place was warm and cozy. The girl had turned on the light, and the room was lit with a pleasant glow, dimmed by the pink lampshade. Tony held it in a hallway, reluctant to take off his old dirty sneakers. "Would your family mind if you brought me over?" the man asked. "I don't have any family. I live alone," Sandra replied. "Would you like to take a shower? You probably need to wash up." Tony nodded his head. He didn't shower in a long time and thought soap and a hot shower would be nice. Sandra disappeared into the back of the apartment and returned a minute later, handing Tony a towel. It smelled very nice. After a little more thought, she opened the closet and took out a box where she kept their parents' most precious things. The girl held out a blue shirt and jeans to Tony. "Here, there's my dad's clothes. You can change into them," she said. "Thank you." The man thanked her and disappeared behind the bathroom door. Sandra opened the fridge and thought about what she could feed her rescuer. She turned on the kettle and put a pan on the stove, deciding to make a pasta. As she clattered around the stove, she could hear the water running in the bathroom. "Poor guy, he probably hasn't had a bath in a long time," Sandra thought. The girl tried her best to make the meal tasty. She wanted to feed the man who had accidentally gotten in the way of the scumbags who could rape and kill her. Sandra carefully arranged the plates on the table, took the orange juice out of the fridge, and laid out the bread. After some thoughts, she decided that there was something to celebrate today and placed a bottle of wine on the table that she had saved for a special occasion. Sandra noticed that the sound of the water was no longer audible. A few minutes later, Tony appeared in the kitchen doorway. Sandra looked at him and couldn't believe her eyes. Standing in front of her was her father, only very young. Dad was dressed in his favorite blue shirt and jeans. He always dressed like that when they went for walks together. The dazed girl sat down on a chair, unable to stand. Her legs were shaking and she felt a little dizzy. "Is something wrong?" Tony asked, confused by Sandra's reaction. "I must have agreed to wear your father's clothes for nothing." No, it's fine. Sit down, please. I will get you something to eat. Would you like some wine?" The girl managed to cope with her excitement. With an uncertain shrug, Tony took a corkscrew and corked the bottle and poured the fragrant pink liquid into the glasses. "To my salvation and to you," Sandra said with a smile. They ate, drank wine, and talked like old friends. Tony told her how he had ended up on the streets, and Sandra told her how much she missed her parents. "I understand," the man said, pouring wine from the bottle into the glasses. "I was also very sad when my father left me and my mother for another woman. But at least you know he was alive. I wake up every day thinking that my parents are in heaven and will never be with me. I don't know what's harder, but I feel for you, believe me." Tony nodded understandingly. They talked into the night. When the man wanted to leave, Sandra wouldn't let him go. No, I will make you bed on the sofa in the living room. At least you will get a good night's sleep." In the morning, Tony woke up to the smell of coffee wafting through the apartment. He really didn't want to get out of the clean bed. It had been a long time since the man had slept so well. After getting dressed, he stretched and looked out the window. "I wonder what time is it," the man thought. He looked around, hoping to find a watch. Suddenly, Tony's eyes fell on a framed photograph on a dresser. Unbelievable. Where did my father's pictures came from? The man thought. He picked up the picture and studied the faces. On the left was Tony's father, dressed in a black suit, just like in the photograph he just keeps since childhood. And next to him was a strange woman sitting in a chair with a little girl on her lap. Tony didn't notice Sandra enter the room. "Are you awake?" she asked in a friendly voice. "And I've already made breakfast. Let's go. The coffee's getting cold." She turned to go back to the kitchen, but Tony stopped her. "Sandra, who is that in the picture?" the man asked. "Oh, that's my favorite. That's Dad. You look just like him. And that's Mom and little me. Funny, isn't it? girl smiled, looking at the photo of her naive face framed by curly hair. Tony looked at Sandra in surprise and then ran out of the room without letting go of the photo. "Sandra, where are my clothes?" he called from the bathroom. "I can't find my jeans jacket. I threw it down the garbage chute this morning. You can't wear it anymore." Sandra looked at him in surprise, not understanding why Tony was so upset. "Let's run," he said, slipping his feet into his old sneakers. "Let's run to the garbage chute." "Are you crazy? But why?" Not realizing what had happened, Sandra laced up her sneakers and followed the man. He went through the garbage, mumbling something the whole time. Finally, he pulled out his jacket from among the food scraps and miscellaneous junk. Just as quickly, Tony ran back into Sandra's apartment, painting. He handed the girl a picture of himself that he had taken out of the inside pocket of his jeans jacket. "Look, what is this?" Sandra asked, shifting her gaze from Tom to the faces in the picture. "That's me, little. That's my mom, and that's my dad," said the man. "Do you understand? That is my own father, who left my mother when I was 5 years old. I've kept this picture all my life, and this is your picture. That's you, that's your mother, and that's my father." "Your father?" Sandra began to understand what Tony was trying to say. In both pictures, the same man, was equally dear to both Sandra and Tony, was looking at them and smiling. "So you and I are brother and sister. Are you my big brother, Tony?" The girl said as if spellbound. "Yes, you're my sister, but I have never seen before in my life, and who last night accidentally scared away the scum that was attacking my little sister." "It's unbelievable," Sandra whispered. "Did God send you to me so I wouldn't feel so lonely anymore?" "No, it's our daddy up there in heaven who made us find each other," said the brother to his sister. They looked at each other. Tears streamed down Sandra's cheeks. Without saying a word, Tony put his arms around her and held her close, feeling the fire of the happiness in his heart, the warmth of which spread throughout his body.